Hello and welcome to the Peak Podcast. My name is Kyle Nelson, and I got my good buddy and co-host, good friend, Mr. Eli Libby. What's going on, dude?
Hey, buddy. I am excited. I really like the new thing we talked about with pour some sugar on me to kind of kick the pre-show.
In the pre-calls, yes.
I
fill the room with some energy.
The small wins that we talk about fire me up.
Yes.
It's a small win of the day.
Just keep the energy going. When we jump on podcast,
Yeah.
the pre-conversation, and they got some good music going, it just sets the tone.
Sure. We had Get Jiggy with
We had Will Smith
which
getting
I
jiggy with it,
kind of
which is
like
pretty
that.
good.
That's kind of fun.
I like that a lot.
I was stoked to our guests knew. I was really pumped. So.
Well, this is the Peak Podcast where we have conversations with consultants, coaches, business owners, and trainers, and really dive into what was their peak moment. What was the impact that they found that they had? And typically that is right before the business that they currently have today. There's a really good story behind that. We're also the co-founders of Peak Fulfillment, which is a self-guided solo retreat program and mastermind where you will dive in on your own in solitude, self-reflection, self-discovery, and vision crafting. Any interest in that, make sure to reach out to us at peakfulfillment.co. But without further ado, today we have Mark Noble. He is the founder of Noble Force, and he helps executive coaches, does business advisory, and leadership training, all about attracting and retaining the best on your team. Mark, welcome to the Peak Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here.
So good to see you, Mark. I really enjoyed our pre-chat, and I love the energy that you brought, and just can't wait to just talk today.
Yeah.
It's just a recording. So kicking it off, I want to know your little icebreaker. I want to know your favorite Christmas movie.
Oh goodness, Elf.
Elf.
Elf. Yeah. I like ridiculousness. Is that a word?
Yes, ridiculous.
I think ridiculousness is a.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell just kills me. I just look at him and I think of all sorts of skit. I think of more cowbell. So.
Oh, come on.
Elf. When they filmed that movie, have you ever guys seen any type of documentary on how they filmed that movie? So it was the first time that forced perspective was brought back to Hollywood because it's all the way that they filmed it. He's like 10 feet away from everyone else to make him look larger. And the director also wanted to make sure not to use CGI. So everything in that movie is just real filming in studios. They didn't use any CGI.
So he's actually closer to the camera.
Yes.
How do they do it from an aperture perspective?
I don't know.
Like how do they so wide?
Yeah, it's all forced perspective. It's really cool. There's a documentary on.
I'm gonna watch that.
Mark,
you should watch that too.
All the shots that are done in New York were completely improvised, and those are real people walking. They're not actors. So when he's going through the tunnel, like that is just Will Ferrell just doing it. It wasn't planned or anything. It's pretty crazy.
That is
Anyways,
so cool.
I love that movie. I'm stoked.
Well, you're validating me. Thank you.
You
didn't say that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
No. So, Mark, we're going to jump in here. What you do here at Noble Force is incredible. Some of the work that you do. Take us back to the year prior to starting this. What was like an aha moment for you and why you needed to get this thing kicked off?
I had been in the commercial real estate brokerage business for quite a few years and was on the board of an international company. We actually had 375 offices in the world at Colliers International. And they assigned me as a board responsibility. They asked me to be a liaison to the learning university, building a learning university. And back in 2001, 2002, everything wasn't digital. The internet didn't exist as a resource for everyone just to go to and find anything, which you can today. So that all of these elite training systems, Korn Ferry, different universities, they knew that I had some influence on the expenditure of training in 375 offices in the world. They knew that was a big number. So the only way they could give me an experience of what they were going to teach and train was to give me an experience. I mean, the only way for me to adopt it or like it or approve an expenditure or recommend an expenditure was for them to give me an experience of it. So they were forced to go train me while they were trying to win the business from us. And so it was I went around the world with Colliers and they were, it was just amazing going to Prague and to Vancouver and all over the place, training these systems with some of the brightest people.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even be their satchel in terms of their brain power. But I sold out of the business in 2011 and wasn't sure what I was going to do. And the founder of one of these companies, Market Force, called me and had been in a significant biking accident training for the Ironman on Kona. And he said, I can't go forward for a few weeks training and I need you to go do it. And so he handed me all the intellectual property and he said, would you go do it? And I said, well, there's 500 slides there. I don't have language for those. And he said, I'll train you, I'll coach you. And so I just saw it as a divine thing that you're going to head away from the transaction world, and you're going to head in the direction of working hard to enrich people every time you meet them and every time you work with them.
Wow. What a sign.
What a cool story. So after you went through that process of being thrown 500 slides that you had to figure out, how did you get going with Noble Force? How did you get your first clients? How did you really develop what you're kind of offering to the world?
It actually worked on me by helping me move more from transactions to more learning. And I knew that these systems that I had been trained in by two different companies that we hired were really foundational to any coaching environment or any training environment for companies. But I knew I had to supply my own or learn from other people. And so I became a very studious guy. So a regular practice for me is reading books, outlining books, and extracting from books to go into a book thinking there's a framework here or multiple frameworks for how the guys at Peak Fulfillment can do what they do if they come to me with that certain problem. And so I'm constantly looking for studying what people do, how they do it, and developing some of my own. And so I've gone from about 13 initial frameworks to about 84. Wow. And it could be, but it has to be, your company would come to me with something different than somebody else's company. So every company is an economic engine. Every engine has all these working parts, and most of those working parts are operated by people. Mm-hmm. And so most people describe me as the oil in their engine. It makes the business run smoothly.
I love that. I've never heard that one before. We're all about analogies, and that one was really good. The oil in the engine. That was a good one.
Good.
Mark, what in this transitional period of hearing about this individual in this really bad accident, you starting to take over and starting to really build a lot of acumen in what you're doing today. What is a personal characteristic that you feel like you either had and or developed right in that sweet spot? Because we have a lot of listeners that are on this cusp of trying to jump ship, trying to commit, going after the thing that they love or the thing they're good at. What is a characteristic that you either had and or developed right in that sweet spot?
Well, the situation I was in was a bit unique in that I walked away from the business with a lot of frameworks, but those frameworks are industry agnostic. Most people that are bankers or most people that are insurance agents or brokers, or they walk away and they see their future as training bankers or training insurance agents. And I walked away with, and they don't have frameworks. So they choose Vistage, they choose EOS, they choose all sorts of different types of Simon Sinek's programs. They choose all sorts of things to try and get certified in. But I walked away with this huge menu of frameworks. And what I knew was that Dallas was such a strong market for commercial real estate brokerage that I didn't want to get branded as a commercial real estate broker coach. And so I committed to not accepting any business from commercial real estate brokers at all. And my first good client was a civil engineering firm. And so that took about 19 months to find that business. And so I just continued to study all along the way, and different companies that I started working with I was referred to. I've really literally have up until about a year ago had no real market presence from the social media standpoint. and I hired a marketing lady, and she's done a great job building a little bit of a profile for me. But your folks, they have to find frameworks for how they go do what they're going to do, which is a bit of a stymie. It's a bit of a bit of a hurdle. They'll say, well, would you like to be an EOS implementer? Well, sure. Well, you need to pay us $40,000 and $7,000 a year for recertification. And so I didn't have that struggle. But it's all about what lights you up. You shouldn't be doing a second career unless it really excites you and lights you up. And so it really lends itself to what is your core purpose, understanding your core purpose and your principles and values, and having somebody help you uncover those, and then trying to stay consistent, staying consistent with those values and not violate those values for yourself. And I really feel like the right lane will open up for you.
Absolutely. We have a ton of people go through our program that are in that exact spot where they're like, they feel like there's some calling or purpose. They're not quite sure, but they want to make sure their new business or new career is going to really light them up, and it's somewhere they want to be, and they can go in our program.
And that aligns, right, with their core values and their purpose.
It gives them tons of clarity through that.
Yeah. I was telling Eli in our interview about, I guess it's 22 years ago, a coach with Sherlaw's, a company called Sherlaw's, took me in Sacramento to a little coffee shop called Starbucks I had never heard of. And he said, would you like to understand your core purpose? And so he took me through an exercise there in Starbucks. And then he pointed me in a direction. He came up with my three values are care, respect, and fun. And those care should show up as deep listening. Yes. Respect should show up as honoring the opinion of others. And fun should show up as not frivolity, but fun should show up as lightening the load on people.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to do is lighten the burden, because there's so much burden and uncertainty. And so he said, I see your core purpose is enriching others. And so he sent me back to Dallas, Texas 20 something years ago. And I opened the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I developed my personal mission statement. And it's been all kind of adhering to that ever since.
Dude, that's awesome.
That is so cool. I have a question when you're done.
I just love hearing fun. That's definitely been a theme from very great thought leaders talk about making sure to have that as a core principle, and the way that you defined it's amazing. I really like that.
Yeah, the founder, I've got a great story around that if you want to hear it.
Let's hear it.
The founder of Market Force back in the 1960s was a neuroscientist and was getting his doctorate in PhD, and he could not come up with his title to his thesis. And he was a brilliant guy, but kind of a difficult guy to deal with. He wanted to build a business execution system, or a business system rooted in neuroscience, and he ended up doing it, called Market Force. He's deceased now, but the way he came up with the title for his thesis was that he recalled that when he was little, they lived next to a school, and he was over the grade school one day, and he was looking in. He was really young, and he was just looking in the fence, and people were kicking the ball and running and reading and wrestling and having fun. But then the bell rang, and then everybody had to line up. They had to spit out their gum. They had to quit talking, and they were marched into the building. And he came up with this idea that we were in our most vulnerable is not the word, our impressionable time in life. We were trained that bad things happen inside buildings, that our subconscious is wired that when we go in there, it's going to be bad. When we get out of school, it's going to be bad. And so he created a business execution system to help people have more fun in business, because in business, there's all this pressure, and people tend to interpret the pressure as life and death, and not just simple identity pressure. And so I go into companies, and that's the first thing I do, is help people uncover where the pressure is happening, that is really their DNA. They're being triggered, that this pressure to perform, to make more money, to please my boss, to turn out these projects, they're responding in a life and death manner, and that is not a way to do business. And that's removing all those pressures is my first goal.
That is so cool. I love that. I love that. Like alleviating the pressure, taking the burden off. I mean, that's what you said one of your core values was. Can you recall what that exercise looked like that you did in Starbucks? Like, what did he walk you through to find those 3 core values?
The first thing he said is, he told me that I'm going to really challenge your thinking, because people don't normally think this way.
Sure.
And what he did is he asked me, he had a marker board, he had a little tablet, and he said, if you weren't here, what would you be doing? And so I wrote, and so I'd be finishing that project. I'd be cold calling. I'd be doing these things. I'd be doing this. And so then he would ask these questions, and you'd fill out a bunch of stuff. And then he would draw a little arc, meaning the content is below and the context is above. And then above that arc, he would say, okay, we've paid somebody to do all that stuff for you. Now what would you do? And I'd come up with this or that and this or that. And it would, and then he would draw another arc, and he'd say, okay, we've paid somebody to get all that done. All that's done for you. Now what would you do? And he would take you through this exercise, and it eventually takes you to higher quality of life type things. I would call my mother. I would go spend time with my 90-year-old mother. I would go tell my sister I love her. You get to this place where you never think you're going to go. And then once you run out of those things and you keep saying all that's done, you call your sister, you've done this. Then he says, why? And then you have to start listing for him, why was that the most important thing? And he's listening for where he saw my eyes start to gleam.
Yeah.
And where my energy got high.
Sure.
You know what? I would go visit those guys at Peak Fulfillment.
Yeah.
He'd see that energy, and he'd just initial that. And then he'd get to the end of this long, exhausting experience, and he'd go, well, is it more this or is it more that? Is it more this? Or, you're saying you'd go visit this person, you'd go visit that person. Is it more about visiting people, or is it about, he just take you through this long exercise, and it's just around getting to their priorities in a way where they would have never thought to do that.
That is so cool. I love the process of refining and continuously diving deeper until it's like these aha.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Mark, as we wrap things up, we always like asking our guests if there's one thing you hope that our audience can take away from this conversation that you made impact with. What would that be?
There's a lot of pressure on people because the degree of change that's going on in the workforce. Yeah. Our organizations are still primarily functioning in a 20th century manner where leaders are command and control. They're not moving forward with a new type of leadership dynamic because private equity and their need, people that are a little younger than me, their need to maximize their returns on their exit are driving a lack of disruption. And you've got these new generations about to flood the workforce in 2027, and it's going to cause a massive clash. Companies where leadership's not prepared. So just to understand that's not life, and all that stuff's not life and death, but something is going on in business, and it's helping people understand that they're acting in a survival strategy. I want people not to treat them like they're a problem, but treat them like they're just simply a set of concerns.
Yeah. That's amazing, Mark.
Look at it.
So good, man.
Mark, if people wanted to get in contact with you, where would be the best place for that?
Well, Mark at thenobleforce.com. It's probably the easiest one. I'm not a guy whose emails get lost, so I've got that narrowed down pretty well. But I'll help them any way I can, or direct them to the best resources, um, or just make sure I enrich them in some way. I'm not going to let go of them until they grow.
Sure.
Love
love that. Ooh. I got
There's no grow or go. It's just grow with Mark.
Exactly. Got you grip.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I know there was a lot to take away from, and we appreciate your time.
Great fun. Thank you, guys.
That was an awesome conversation. You brought a lot of nuggets to that.
That was so awesome, man. Next
And
time we're in Dallas, we should go hang out with Mark.
yeah, we're gonna hang
Grab
out
a little
with Mark for
barbecue
sure.
or something.
Yeah,
maybe take the buggy out.
Starbucks.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Thank you so much
That's
for
so
joining
cool.
us on the Peak Podcast. If you want to listen to great thought leaders just like Mark and you want to follow along, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And we can't wait to bring you along on the next episode. We'll see you then.
See you guys.